All right, let's jump right in. Whether you're trying to learn Chinese or you're just a language nerd like me, you're in the right place. Because what we're about to unpack is going to totally change how you look at Chinese vocabulary. We're talking about the hidden logic, the system that's hiding in plain sight. And the folks over at Mandarin Blueprint who inspired this explainer, they make this incredible promise. They say there's some secret knowledge here that very few people, even advanced speakers, really get. And once you get it, well, learning becomes way faster, way easier, and honestly, it turns the language into this fascinating puzzle you can actually solve.
So here's the game plan. We're going to start by looking at something even smaller than a character. Then we'll make the two big word families. After that, we'll decode how they combine, which is the really cool part. We'll look at the patterns, and by the end, you're going to have what feels like a language learning superpower.
Okay, first things first, to really get how Chinese words work, we have to start with their absolute most basic building blocks. And, they're not always what you might think they are. The big important idea here is something called a morpheme. Just think of it like a Lego brick of meaning. It's the smallest possible piece of a language that you can't break down any further without losing its meaning. And if you're thinking, what on earth is a morpheme? Don't worry, let's just look at English for a second. Take the word unexpected. It's one single word, right? But it's actually built from three of those little Lego bricks, three morphemes. You've got un, which means not, expect, which is the main idea, and ed, which tells you it happened in the past. Chinese, it turns out, plays by very similar rules. And this, right here, this is one of the most important things to understand. What's the difference between a character and a word? Well, pretty much every single character is a morpheme. It's a chunk of meaning. But, and this is the key, not every character is a word you can just use by itself. Some of them have to team up with other characters to make sense. So now that we have our building blocks, our morphemes, let's see how they get put together. Turns out, pretty much all Chinese words fall into one of two big families.
So on one side, you have pure words. These are simple, they're made of just one morpheme. But on the other side, you have compound words. And this is where the real magic happens, because these words are made by combining multiple morphemes, and they make up the vast majority of the entire Chinese language.
Now, check this out, because this is so cool. This shows you how some of those pure words work, especially when they're borrowed from other languages. Take the word for sofa, shafa. The characters they picked literally mean sand and to send out. I mean, that has nothing to do with the couch. The characters were chosen just for how they sound. Same thing with cola, Ken plus happy, and hacker, appall plus guest. It's just a fascinating look at how languages borrow and adapt. Okay, so let's get to the heart of this thing. We're talking about that huge family of compound words. This isn't just a random jumble of characters. No. There is an elegant, logical system for how they're combined. It's a system.
And how complex is this system? 100 different patterns? 1,000? No, get this. There are just 7. 7 main logical patterns that are used to build the overwhelming majority of words in Chinese. If you understand these, you've found the secret key.
All right, so we're not going to walk through all 7 patterns, but let's unpack a few of the most common and, frankly, most powerful ones so you can really see this beautiful system at play. Let's start with a really intuitive one, the verb-object pattern. It's simple. The first character is an action, and the second character is the thing that action is happening to. So let's say you combine kan, which means to look, with shu, which means book. What do you think that means? Exactly. To read, lookbook. It makes perfect sense. And once you see that pattern, you can start making educated guesses all over the place. It's an incredibly powerful shortcut. Okay, next up, we've got a pattern called biased. All this means is that one character is the main idea, the main category, and the other character just describes it. The classic example is the word for airplane. The main category is ji, a machine. Simple enough. But what kind of machine? It's a fei, a flying machine. You put them together, fei-ji, you get an airplane. So logical. Now, this one, the parallel pattern, is one of my absolute favorites. This is where you combine two characters that have equal weight. Sometimes they're opposites, like da, big, and xiao, small, which combine to mean size. But the best example is mao dun. This means contradiction. Why? Well, mo means spear and dun means shield.
The word comes from an ancient story about a guy trying to sell a spear that could pierce anything and a shield that could block anything. Somebody asked, what happens if you hit the shield with the spear? And boom, spear shield became the word for contradiction. How cool is that?
And for our last pattern today, we have one that's basically a tiny little sentence packed into a single word. It's called subject-predicate. The first character is the thing, the subject, and the second character is what that thing is doing. So if D, the ground, starts to vibe, you get jichin, an earthquake. The ground vibrates. It's a whole story told in just 2 characters.
So what's the big takeaway here? I mean, why is knowing all this so important? Well, because understanding these patterns isn't just a neat little piece of trivia. It's a tool that totally changes how you approach the language.
This is the whole point. Your brain literally shifts gears. You go from just trying to memorize thousands of random words to logically figuring them out. You can actually start guessing what new words mean. And because you see the logic, the little story inside each word, it sticks in your brain so much better. You start to see that it's not random at all. It's an incredibly elegant and deeply logical system.
And that really just leaves us with one last question to chew on. We just looked at something that can seem impossibly complex, Chinese vocabulary, and we found the simple, logical system hiding underneath it all. So it kind of makes you wonder, what other impenetrable things in our lives are maybe not so random after all, but are just a system of patterns we haven't learned how to see yet?
You know that feeling, right? You're in a brand new country, you've got a freeze book, and you're desperately flipping through it trying to find a sentence you'll probably never need again. But what if there was a smarter way? What if instead of memorizing rigid phrases, you could learn just a few key patterns? Think of them like Lego bricks that let you build almost any sentence you need right on the spot. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. Instead of memorizing 100 different phrases, you just master a few core structures. Then you can just slot in new words as you learn them. You know, it's kind of like the difference between being given a fish and learning how to fish. For a traveler, this approach is an absolute game changer.
So here's our game plan. We're going to build up our skills in 3 really logical steps. First, we'll get you comfortable with just getting around. Then, we'll move on to communicating your essential needs and wants. And finally, we'll get into the good stuff, how to have polite, respectful conversations that can make your entire trip so much better. Okay, let's dive right in. First things first, you've just landed, you're in a new city, and you need to figure out where you're going. These first few patterns are your absolute lifeline for navigating the world around you. All right, get ready to meet your new best friend. Seriously, this is probably the single most important pattern for getting around. To ask, how do I get to? All you do is say the name of the place first, and then you add this phrase, 怎么走? That last word, 走, is super flexible. In this context, it just means to go or to get to. Let's see how it works. So, let's say you need to find the metro. You just say, 地铁站怎么走? See? So simple. But here's a fantastic pro tip to sound way more natural and polite. Always start with a quick 你好, or even better, 请问, which means, excuse me, may I ask? It's such a small thing, but trust me, it makes a world of difference. Okay, this is a really cool little detail that'll make you sound much more advanced. There are actually 2 ways to ask where. You use 哪儿有 when you're looking for any old version of something, like asking, hey, is there a bus station somewhere around here? But you use 在哪里 when you're looking for the specific place you know is nearby, like where is the pharmacy in this mall? So you might wander down a street and ask someone, 哪儿有公共汽车站? Just hoping to find any bus stop at all. But if you're inside a huge department store and you know there's a pharmacy in there somewhere, you'd ask, 药店在哪里? To find that specific one. And of course, there's the all-important question, 洗手间在哪里? You'll definitely want to remember that one. And here is a piece of advice that will save you so much time and stress. Seriously, forget trying to learn complicated phrases to explain directions to a taxi driver. Just download the Didi app. It's the Chinese version of Uber, it has an English interface, and it is an absolute lifesaver. You just type in your destination, and you're good to go. All right, so you can find your way around. Check. What's next? Well, you need to be able to ask for what you actually need. This next set of patterns is all about getting the essentials, whether that's a ticket, some food, or a place to sleep. Okay, this next pattern is your go-to for anything urgent. It's simple, it's direct, and it is incredibly useful. The phrase is 我需要, which just means I need. You say that, and then you tack on whatever it is you need right after it. Let me show you just how handy this is. For instance, 我需要买电话卡. I need to buy a phone card.
Or, and this is probably the single most important phrase for any modern traveler, 我需要充电. I need to charge my phone. Because, let's be real, your phone is everything. It's your map, your translator, your lifeline. And if things get really tricky, a simple 我需要帮助 means I need help. So, 我需要 is for things that are pretty critical. But what if you just want to express something you'd like to do? For that, you use a slightly softer phrase, 我想. This means I would like to or I want to. And it's just perfect for stating your intentions in a more casual way.
So you can walk up to the ticket counter at the train station and say, 我想买票. I'd like to buy a ticket. When you start getting hungry, you can tell your friends, 我想吃饭. I'd like to eat. And when you get to the hotel, 我想订房间. I'd like to book a room. See how useful that is? All right, you absolutely cannot go shopping without this one. It's essential. To ask how much is this, you just point to something right near you and say, 这个多少钱? If something's a little further away, you just swap it for 那个多少钱? This is your golden ticket for any shop or market for sure.
Okay, this is where we level up. This is where we go from just surviving to actually connecting with people. Being able to move from just stating what you want to asking polite questions, well, that can completely transform your entire travel experience. These final patterns are all about mastering that respectful interaction. So, how do you politely ask a shopkeeper or a restaurant if they have something you're looking for? It's actually surprisingly easy. You start with 你们有, which basically means, do you guys have? Then you add the item, and you finish it all off with a tiny little magic particle, ma. And this is the key. This little particle, ma, is amazing. It doesn't really have a meaning on its own. You just add it to the end of a statement and poof, it magically turns it into a yes or no question. You're going to see it pop up a few more times.
Okay, just imagine this. Your phone is at 1%, you're totally lost. You duck into a little shop and you ask, 你们有充电线吗? Do you have a charging cable? See how powerful that is? Or the other modern classic. The moment you sit down at a cafe, you ask, 你们有 Wi-Fi吗? Now, when you're not totally sure about the local rules or customs, this next pattern is your safety net. To politely ask, can I or may I, you use the phrase, 我可以吗? It shows respect, and it can definitely save you from some awkward moments. And just look at how versatile this one pattern is. If you're in a beautiful temple, you might ask, 我可以拍照呢? May I take a picture? In a modern restaurant, you can ask, 我可以扫码点餐呢? Can I scan the code to order? And if you hit it off with a new friend, it's super common to ask, 我可以加你微信吗? Can I add you on WeChat? You know, sometimes you just need a little help from a stranger. This next pattern is the perfect, polite way to ask for a small favor. It starts with, can you help me? And the keywords to remember are 帮我, which literally means help me. So if you want someone to take your picture, you can just ask a passerby, 你可以帮我拍照吗? Need a good recommendation from your hotel concierge? 你可以帮我推荐一个导游吗? You can see how this one pattern just empowers you in so many different situations. All right, and for our final pattern, let's look at the most direct but still polite way to ask for something. The phrase is 请给我, which just means please give me. It's clear, it's efficient, and you will find yourself using this one all the time. When you're checking out at a store, you can say 请给我一个袋子. Please give me a bag. At a restaurant, 请给我一杯水, a glass of water. And hey, if you're really hungry, you can even ask for 请给我加饭, more rice. And of course, following any of these with a simple 谢谢 is always the right move. So there you have it. This isn't just a list of phrases to memorize and then forget. It's a flexible toolkit of patterns that gives you the power to actually communicate. It is a much smarter way to learn, and honestly, a much better way to travel. So now that you have the tools, there's only one question left. What's the first thing you'll say? All right, so let's get right into it. If you're learning Chinese, you know that making vocabulary stick can be a huge challenge. Well, today, we're going to break down a really powerful 3-pillar system from Dr. Izzy Seeley that's designed to completely supercharge how you learn and, more importantly, remember new words. You know this feeling, right? We've all been there. You spend hours and hours with your flashcards. You're feeling good, you're feeling confident, and then you try to have a real conversation and poof, nothing. It's like the words just evaporate into thin air. You're just standing there totally tongue-tied. It is incredibly frustrating. So
That's the big question, isn't it? How do you actually make those words stick? The secret isn't about studying harder or for longer hours. It's about studying smarter. It's about having a system to move words from your short-term memory into your active, usable vocabulary. And the answer lies in thinking about it as a complete system. You see, the problem for most of us isn't just about memorization. That's actually only one piece of a much bigger puzzle. To really succeed, you need a solid, stable structure to support all your learning efforts. And this is the perfect way to visualize it. The learning tripod. It's got 3 legs, and each one is absolutely essential. First, you prioritize. Then you memorize. And finally, you mobilize. Just think about a real tripod. If any one of those legs is weak or missing, the whole thing just topples over. You need all 3 for a stable, effective learning strategy. So let's dig into that first pillar, prioritizing. Before you even think about memorizing a single word, you have to ask a really important question. Am I even learning the right words? Because let me tell you, not all words are created equal. Okay, so the smartest place to start by far is with something called a frequency list. These are basically lists of words ranked by how often they're actually used in daily life. It's like a strategic shortcut. It helps you focus on the vocabulary that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck in real-world conversations. And this chart shows you exactly why that's a game changer. It's the 80-20 rule in action. Get this, the top 1,000 most common words make up a staggering 80% of everyday communication. Just think about that. By mastering that core vocabulary, you unlock the ability to understand the vast majority of conversations happening around you. But, frequency lists are just the beginning. The next step is to create a list of words that are important specifically to you. What's your job? What are your hobbies? How do you introduce yourself and talk about your family? Building a personal list makes the language immediately relevant and useful in your own life. All right, so once you've figured out what to learn, we move on to pillar number 2, memorization. And listen, this is not about cramming. This is about building a deep, connected web of knowledge in your brain so that words aren't just isolated facts. They have context, they have meaning, they have connections. There are a few core techniques for this, and they work together beautifully. You've got spaced repetition systems like Anki, which are amazing for recall. You've got comprehensible input, basically just reading and listening a lot. But for Chinese specifically, this third one, character deconstruction, is an absolute game changer. Here's the deal. So many Chinese words are just logical combinations of simpler characters. So instead of trying to brute force memorize a word as one big chunk of sound, you can break it down into its building blocks. When you do that, you start to see the logic behind it. Let me show you a perfect example. The word for telephone is 电话. It's made up of 2 characters. The first one, 电, means electric. The second one, 话, means speech. Put them together, electric speech. It's a telephone. Once you see that, it's almost impossible to forget, right? And you see this pattern everywhere. Take the word for computer, 电脑. There's that electric character again, 电. This time it's paired with 脑, which means brain. So a computer is an electric brain. How cool is that? This method turns memorization from a chore into a really fun and fascinating puzzle. The other key technique is something called comprehensible input. Now, don't let the fancy terms scare you. It just means you should listen to and read things where you already understand most of what's going on. When a new word pops up, your brain can naturally figure out its meaning from all the surrounding context. This is how you build that mental web we were talking about. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial pillar of all, mobilization. You've picked the right words, you've memorized them deeply, but now comes the big leap. You have to turn that passive knowledge into an active, usable skill. You have to bridge the gap between recognizing a word and actually using it. This question right here is everything. It's a total mindset shift. I mean, think about it. It's one thing to see a word on a flashcard and go, oh yeah, I know that one. But it's a completely different skill to pull that word out of your brain on demand in the middle of a conversation and use it correctly in a sentence. That's the real goal. So how do we actually do that? Well, here are 3 simple but incredibly powerful exercises you can start doing today to turn that passive vocab into an active skill. Let's break them down. First up, for every single new word you learn, force yourself to create 5 different sentences using it. This is so important. It trains your brain to be flexible with the word, to use it in different contexts. And hey, if you get stuck, you can always use a dictionary app like Pleco, which has tons of example sentences to give you some ideas.
Next, start trying to think in Chinese. Seriously. Instead of translating from English in your head, just try to describe the room you're in or what you're doing directly in Chinese. It feels a little weird at first, but it is such a powerful habit. And finally, find a language partner. Nothing, and I mean nothing, beats real-world practice. You can try to use your new words when you chat. A great little exercise is to write a short paragraph about your day using your new words. Send it to them and have them correct it, and maybe even send back an audio recording. That loop of active use and direct feedback is pure gold.
So, when you put it all together, prioritize, memorize, mobilize, you can see that this system is designed to shift your entire goal. The point isn't to just collect a massive pile of words. The point is to become a confident, effective communicator.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? At the end of the day, success isn't measured by how big your Anki deck is. It's measured by whether you can actually connect with another person. It's about communication.
So there you have it, a stable, three-pillared system to stop those words from just evaporating from your brain. You have the framework. The only question left is, with this newfound confidence and this solid system, what are you going to say first?
Hey everyone, so today we're tackling a big one, how to learn Chinese. We're going to challenge that whole idea that it's this impossible mountain to climb, and instead, I want to show you a much smarter, a much more effective way to do it. Let's dive in.
So, is Chinese the world's hardest language? You hear this all the time, right? And look, it definitely takes real dedication. But that reputation, well, it doesn't really tell the whole story. The real difficulty might not be what you think it is.
And here's the thing, and this is really the whole point of our chat today. The reason so many people give up isn't because of the tones or the characters themselves. It's because their plan is broken. They're using old, inefficient methods that just lead to frustration. So let's build a better plan.
All right, so let's get into it. Part 1, laying the foundation. Think of this as the concrete you pour before you even think about putting up walls. Getting these two things right at the very beginning, it changes everything.
Okay, your very first job, before you even touch a single character or a grammar rule, is to master the sounds. This means getting pinyin, the official alphabet for Mandarin, down cold. And this isn't just about sounding good when you speak, it's about training your brain to actually understand what you're hearing. It's the key that unlocks everything that comes later. And the payoff for getting pronunciation right is huge. It just keeps giving back. I mean, of course it helps you connect with people and it boosts your confidence, but the real secret weapon here is that it sharpens your listening. It makes it so much easier to understand what people are saying, which, as we're about to see, is the real engine of learning a language.
And then step number 2, learn to read. Like right away. So many learners try to avoid the characters for as long as they can, and honestly, it is a massive mistake. Reading is the single fastest way to build a huge vocabulary. It's pure, understandable information that you can just soak up at your own speed.
Okay, so we've got our foundation, solid pronunciation and learning to read. But why? Why those two things specifically? Well, it all comes down to the fact that they are the main ways you get input. And that brings us to the core philosophy of how our brains are actually wired to learn any language.
And that big idea is called comprehensible input. It sounds kind of technical, but it's actually super simple. It just means you learn a language by understanding messages, by listening and reading things that you can actually follow along with. You're not consciously studying grammar rules, you're just absorbing patterns from tons and tons of content. It's literally how you learned to speak as a little kid.
And when you put these two approaches side by side, man, the difference is night and day. The old, traditional way has you drilling grammar, memorizing random word lists, and trying to speak before you're ready. This new way, the acquisition approach, is all about getting tons of understandable input first. Because think about it, you can't say something you've never heard or read before, right? Speaking is a result of listening and reading, not the other way around.
Now, when we talk about reading in Chinese, you often hear this number, 3,000 characters. And yeah, that sounds like a lot, I get it. That's basically what you need to read pretty much anything a native speaker would read. Just think of it as the long-term goal.
But here's the magic trick. You don't need all 3,000 to get started, not even close. With just the most common 1,000 characters, you can already understand over 90% of everything you're likely to read. 90%! That means you can start reading really interesting stuff way sooner than you probably think.
Okay, so we know the what. It's all about input. Now let's talk about the how. Let's get into the smart tools and techniques that will actually get you there. And, just as important,
help you avoid the traps that trip most people up. I want to share this quote because it's a story I hear versions of all the time. This person spent months, maybe even years, grinding away on a flashcard app. They memorized thousands of words, and then they got into a real conversation and nothing. The knowledge was just stuck. They couldn't actually use it. It's so frustrating, and it's the direct result of a bad technique.
And that bad technique is called rote learning. It's basically trying to burn information into your brain with just raw repetition, with no context. You know, writing a character 100 times or flipping through digital flashcards of single, isolated words. The memories you create this way are super fragile and almost impossible to use in a real situation.
So the powerful alternative is something called holistic learning. And this house analogy on the screen, it explains it perfectly. Top-down learning is like trying to listen to a conversation without knowing the words. It's a house with no foundation. Bottom-up learning is the opposite, memorizing 3,000 characters by themselves. Now you just have a pile of bricks, but no house. Holistic learning is the sweet spot. You learn a brick, a character, and then you immediately learn how it builds a wall, a word, and how that wall fits into the whole house, a sentence.
This is where tools like spaced repetition software, or SRS, can be a total game changer. But you have to use them right. The number one rule is this: SRS is for reviewing, not for learning. First, you learn something new in context. Then, you put it into your SRS to make sure you never forget it. And for the magic to work, you absolutely have to do your reviews every single day. No exceptions.
Another amazing technique, and this one you can do all by yourself, is called shadowing. It's so simple. You just play some audio from a native speaker, and you try to repeat what they're saying at the same time, like a shadow. It's an incredible workout for your mouth and your ears, and it really bridges that gap between understanding the language and actually speaking it smoothly.
All right, so we've got the philosophy, we've got the tools, but none of it matters if you don't use them consistently. And that's why this last part is maybe the most important piece of the puzzle. It's about the mindset, the psychological fuel that will keep you going for the long haul.
This quote from James Clear says it all. It's about the incredible power of tiny gains. You're not trying to become fluent overnight. You're just trying to be 1% better today than you were yesterday. The mantra is just never have a 0 day. Even doing one flashcard is infinitely better than doing nothing at all.
And here's a little mental trick to make that consistency almost automatic. It's about shifting your focus from goals to identity. So instead of saying, my goal is to learn Chinese, you start telling yourself, I am a Chinese learner. See the difference? A goal is something you reach, and then you're done. Your motivation can disappear. An identity is just who you are. The motivation comes from just acting like yourself.
And this is how that identity gets built, bit by bit. Every single time you sit down to study, every character you look up, every sentence you listen to, you are casting a vote for being a Chinese learner. And when you cast enough of those votes, it just becomes true. It stops feeling like a chore, and it just feels like what you do. And finally, you have to remember that this whole thing is a journey, not a race. You will never, ever be done learning. The moment you get to the top of one mountain, you'll just see another, more interesting one off in the distance. The finish line is always moving. So the only way to win is to fall in love with the process of climbing. The journey is the reward.
So let's end with this question. Don't worry about the entire staircase. Just think about the very first step. What is one small, tiny thing, one vote that you can do right now to become the person you want to be? Maybe it's listening to 30 seconds of a podcast. Maybe it's learning one new character. Whatever it is, go cast that vote. Thanks for watching.
Have you ever looked at someone who's learning Chinese and just thought, how are they getting it so fast, while you feel like you've been stuck for, forever? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the real secrets to making progress fast. And here's a hint. It has way less to do with cramming textbooks than you'd think.
Oh man, it's such a common feeling, isn't it? You're putting in the hours, you're drilling the grammar, but when it comes time to actually speak, you just freeze. You've hit that dreaded plateau. Does that sound familiar? Well, what if I told you the answer isn't about studying harder at all? This quote right here, it gets right to the heart of the matter. See, the real secret isn't about locking yourself in a room with a mountain of flashcards for hours. Nope, it's all about building a natural, easy, daily connection with the language. It's those small, consistent things you do every single day that truly build fluency. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the big secret to fluency. Then we'll dive into daily habits for speaking and writing, and then reading and listening.
After that, we'll talk about how to make it all stick, and we'll wrap up with the very first step you can take, like today.
Okay, so here's the big idea. The goal is to just weave Chinese into your everyday life. It's about getting your brain to kind of live in the language, even if it's only for, say, 10 or 15 minutes a day. It's a huge shift in mindset, really. You're moving from studying Chinese to just using Chinese.
All right, let's dive into some super low-pressure habits that are designed to wake up your Chinese brain. This first part is all about production. Actually getting the words out of your head and into the real world.
Okay, so habit number 1. Now this one might sound a little weird at first, but trust me, it's so effective. Just talk to yourself in Chinese. Seriously, think about it. When it's just you, there's absolutely no pressure, no fear of making a mistake, zero judgment. You can just focus on getting your thoughts out, and that is the absolute fastest way to start actually thinking in Chinese instead of doing that constant exhausting translation in your head. And look at how simple this can be. You're literally just narrating your own life. I'm cutting the onion. The water is boiling. Where are my keys? You just say what you're doing out loud. It creates this powerful direct link between the language and your actions, and after a while, it starts to feel really automatic. All right, coming in at number 2. This next habit takes that same idea and just puts it down on paper.
Keep a one-sentence journal. That's it. Every single day, your mission is to write just one sentence in Chinese. It could be about what you did, how you're feeling, something funny you saw, anything. It's such a powerful way to connect the language to your actual life.
And this is the really cool part. A single sentence might not feel like a big deal, right? But look at this timeline. Over just 1 month, you go from "it rained today" to something much more complex. You can literally see your ability growing. You're basically building this custom library of sentences that are all about your life, which makes them so much easier to remember.
Okay, so we've covered output, speaking, and writing. Now let's flip the script and talk about input, taking the language in. This is all about immersing your senses and turning those little moments in your day into awesome learning opportunities.
Which brings us to habit number 3. Read one short thing every single day. And notice I said short. The key here is frequency, not how much you read. Forget trying to tackle a whole chapter of a book. The goal is just to make reading in Chinese feel like a normal, everyday thing. And the best way to do that is to pick stuff you actually find interesting.
And the great thing is, Chinese is literally everywhere once you start looking for it. Social media posts, comments on YouTube videos, comic strips, even the packaging on some snacks in your pantry. Seriously, every time you spot a character or a word you know out in the wild, your brain makes this super strong connection. It's like a little aha moment.
All right, next up, at number 4, we've got a habit you can literally do with your eyes closed. It's all about passive listening. Just think about all those times when your hands are busy, but your brain is kind of on autopilot. When you're cooking, cleaning, on your commute, at the gym. These are golden opportunities to just have a Chinese podcast or some music playing in the background. You're not trying to understand every word, you're just soaking in the sounds, the rhythm, and the tones of the language. So, you're speaking, writing, reading, and listening. You're doing all this great stuff. But how do you make sure it actually sticks in your brain? Well, these next few habits are all about reinforcing what you're learning and building that long-term confidence.
Okay, habit number 5. This one is an absolute game changer for your memory.
Review a few words every morning. I'm talking just 5 minutes, maybe while your coffee is brewing. Just a quick look at a few words you've learned before. Think of it like a little wake-up call for the Chinese part of your brain. It keeps that vocabulary fresh and stops it from fading away.
And there's actually some cool science behind why this is so powerful. It's a technique called spaced repetition. Basically, when you review stuff at the right intervals, you're sending a signal to your brain that says, "Hey, this is important, don't forget it." And that's what helps move vocabulary from your short-term memory into your long-term memory where it really sticks.
Okay, number 6. This is where we get a little brave. It's time to take your learning public.
You've got to interact with real people, because at the end of the day, that's what language is for, right? Communication. It's time to shift from just studying to actually using it. And listen, this does not have to be some deep, scary conversation. It can be as simple as joining an online community on an app like HelloTalk, or just leaving a simple comment in Chinese on a social media post. Every little bit counts.
And that brings us to our final habit. Number 7. This one is such a clever hack. You change the language on your phone or on some of your apps, it basically turns this thing you stare at all day long into a constant learning tool. Every single time you unlock your phone, you're seeing common, useful words. Your brain just starts to soak it all up through sheer repetition.
Now I know what some of you are thinking. Switch my whole phone to Chinese? No way. But hold on, don't panic. You don't have to go all in at once. Just start small. Pick one social media app you use all the time and switch just that one. Live with it for a week. Once you're comfortable, maybe add another app. This way, it feels totally manageable, not scary.
So there you have it, 7 really powerful but simple habits. But look, knowing about them is one thing. The magic only happens when you actually put them into action. And the key, the absolute key, is to start small and just be consistent.
If you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this. Fluency isn't built in those marathon 4-hour study sessions you do once a month. No, it's forged in these little, tiny, consistent moments that you sprinkle throughout your day. One sentence you read, one phrase you say to yourself, one word you review. That is where the real progress is made.
So what are you waiting for? There's no perfect time to start. The perfect time is right now. Just look back at these 7 habits and pick one, just one, that you're going to start today. Maybe you'll talk to yourself while you cook dinner tonight, or maybe you'll write that one sentence in your journal before you go to sleep. It doesn't matter which one you pick. What matters is that you just start. So, which one is it going to be?
Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're tackling a huge one, mastering Mandarin Chinese. But what if you don't have a ton of money or years to just study full-time? Well, we're going to break down a plan that can get you fluent, even if your schedule's absolutely packed.
And let's be real, it's a pretty daunting challenge, right? I mean, the US State Department even ranks Mandarin as one of the hardest languages out there for English speakers. Most of us just don't have the luxury of studying all day, every day. So, where do you even start?
Okay, so here's the cool part. We're going to break down the exact system a final year Cambridge medical student used to teach themselves Chinese from home. Think about that. This is a system built for maximum efficiency on a super tight budget. And honestly, it just goes to show that with the right plan, even these massive goals are totally doable. All right, let's get into the blueprint.
So, first things first. Before you even think about memorizing a single character, you've got to have a blueprint. Seriously, your success is going to hinge on having a solid plan that you can actually stick to, especially on those days where you feel like you have zero time. And it really all starts with these 3 key steps. First up, you have to define your why. I mean, why are you doing this? Because that's what's going to pull you through the tough days. Second, you've got to figure out your priorities. Are you all about speaking, reading, something else? And third, you need a way to track your progress. Because trust me, seeing how far you've come, that's the best motivation there is.
Okay, now this is a massive strategic shortcut. The whole plan focuses only on what you need for modern communication. We're talking speaking, listening, and just typing with pinyin. It completely, deliberately ignores handwriting. And you might ask why? Well, think about it. Mastering thousands of characters by hand is just so incredibly time-consuming, and for most of us, it's just not necessary in our digital world. Making this one choice, this can literally double your learning speed. No joke.
All right, so you've got your blueprint. Now it's time to build the daily habits that are going to power your learning. This right here, this is the core engine of the whole system.
So the core goal is ambitious, but it's also really simple. Aim to learn about 10 new characters a day. But look, this number isn't set in stone. Some days it might be 8, other days maybe you'll hit 12. The point isn't about being perfect. It's about what the person who created this plan calls gentle consistency. It's all about just showing up. And get this, the toolkit for this system is so simple and super budget-friendly. You've got the HSK textbooks to give you some structure, then you have the free flashcard app Anki for your daily memorization, and finally a dictionary app like Pleco for quick lookups. And that's it. Seriously, no expensive software, none of that stuff needed. Now, here's the crucial part. It's all about how you use these tools together. See, you're not just memorizing single, lonely characters from a textbook with flashcards. The real key is to use flashcard decks that give you full sentences with native audio. This is so important because it means you're learning grammar and context right from day one, not just a random list of words. Okay, so you're building up all this vocabulary. Great, but how do you get those words out of your head and, into an actual conversation? Well, this next part is all about that. It's about activating your Chinese and really making the language come alive. And the key to making that happen is this really powerful idea called comprehensible input.
Basically, it's about finding stuff to listen to or watch where you understand most of it, but not everything. That little gap creates this perfect sweet spot where your brain just naturally starts absorbing new words and grammar from the context. And the best part? You don't feel totally overwhelmed.
And here's how you can brilliantly hack your own schedule to do this. First, you habit stack. That means you listen to a Chinese podcast while you're already doing something else, like making coffee or commuting. Second, you embrace what we can call productive procrastination. So instead of just zoning out to your usual show, you kick back and relax with a fun Chinese TV show. It feels like you're taking a break, but guess what? You're actually learning. But all that listening and watching needs an outlet, right? You got to use it. The goal here is just 1 hour-long chat with a native speaker each week. You can use a platform like italki for this. And please remember, the point is not to be perfect at all. It's just to connect and communicate. And a great little tip is to use the topics from your weekly textbook chapter as a starting point, so you're not stuck for things to say.
Okay, so with all these moving parts, how on earth do you keep it all organized and, more importantly, stay motivated? The answer is surprisingly simple. A single spreadsheet that basically becomes your command center and your own personal motivation machine.
And here's a look at what that's like in practice. It's just a simple log of what you did each day. How many new flashcards did you learn? What podcast did you listen to? When was your speaking session? Just seeing this thing fill up day after day, it's so incredibly motivating because it makes your progress real. You can actually see it.
But the real secret weapon here is that simple journal column in the spreadsheet. All you do is jot down a few words about how you felt that day. And why is this so important? Because learning a language is an emotional roller coaster. There are going to be days you feel like a genius and days you feel completely stuck. And on those tough days, looking back at this journal and seeing the progress, not just in the numbers, but in your own words, that's such a powerful reminder that the path to fluency is never, ever a straight line.
And finally, let's talk about the mindset. Because really, none of these tools or habits are going to matter without the right approach. This whole system is built on one very simple but incredibly powerful philosophy.
And here it is. The ultimate takeaway from all of this is that consistency is everything. This journey isn't about who's the fastest learner. It's about who refuses to stop. Every single day, even if all you do is 5 minutes with your flashcards, you are moving forward. So the real question isn't how fast can I learn? It's just, can I keep going?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down an expert-backed roadmap for learning Mandarin Chinese right from square one. This is especially for you if you've ever looked at the language and just felt completely overwhelmed, not knowing where to even begin. So let's just dive right in with the big question on pretty much everyone's mind. Is Chinese really as impossibly hard to learn as people say it is? Well, the answer might actually surprise you, because the thing that makes most people give up isn't what you'd probably guess.
And here's the absolute core of the problem. It turns out most people don't quit because the language itself is too difficult. They quit because they are just drowning in a sea of confusing, conflicting advice, and they literally have no idea where to start.
Think about it. Should you use flashcards? Find a tutor right away. Try watching TV shows. That constant questioning and second-guessing yourself, it's exhausting. And that feeling, that decision fatigue, is the #1 reason learners throw in the towel. So, to beat that feeling of being overwhelmed, you need a plan. You need a clear, predictable framework that's built on 3 really simple, fundamental principles. And here they are: structure, methodology, and consistency. If you get these 3 things right, fluency stops being some far-off dream, and it actually becomes a predictable outcome. Okay, so that's the big picture. Let's get practical. How do these pillars actually translate into a step-by-step plan you can start using today? Here's your game plan for your first month. On day 1, before you try to memorize a single word, you need to understand how the language sounds. And here's the key: spend just a few hours on this. Get the basics of pinyin and the tones down, and then move on. Don't get stuck here for weeks trying to perfect it.
Now, for the rest of that first month, this chart is your guide. It's simple. About 70 to 80% of your study time is dedicated to building vocabulary. The rest? Just listening practice. That's it.
So you might be wondering, hold on, why so much focus on characters and words right from the get-go? Shouldn't I be drilling grammar or trying to speak? That's a fantastic question. And here's why. Without knowing the characters, Chinese is basically a nightmare of homophones, words that sound the same but mean totally different things. I mean, just take the sound of sure. It could mean to be, matter, city, room, literally dozens of things.
The characters are what give you the clarity.
Now here's the really great news. You can totally skip writing characters out 1,000 times. There are modern memory techniques like this Hansa-movie method that are way more effective. You basically turn your mind into a little movie set, placing memorable images for each part of a character, which helps you lock in its sound, tone, and meaning in just seconds.
And for actual words, which are usually just combos of characters, you can use a similar trick. It's about creating a quick, maybe even absurd, visual story in your head that connects the pieces. For example, if a word is made from the characters for fire and mountain, what do you picture? A volcano, right? It just makes the word stick. Okay, this is crucial. What you don't do is just as important as what you do, so please avoid these common traps in your first 30 days. Don't get bogged down in grammar rules. Don't try to learn from advanced TV shows. Your brain just isn't ready. And honestly, save your money on a tutor, at least for now, until you have a solid foundation.
All right, so let's say you've built up that foundation. You'll probably hit a really common roadblock. You start to realize you can understand a lot more Chinese than you can actually speak.
This happens to everyone, and it's because understanding and speaking are two completely different skills. Recognizing a word is passive knowledge, but actually producing it yourself, pulling it out of thin air, is an active skill. The goal is to close that gap.
So how do we close it? The solution is a technique called activation, and it's all about something called retrieval practice. It just means actively forcing your brain to recall and produce the language, not just recognize it.
And the best part is, you can do this all by yourself. Try flipping your flashcards so you have to go from English to Chinese. Practice with an AI chatbot. Or, and this is a game changer, just talk to yourself in Chinese. Narrate your day. It might feel a little silly at first, but you're building that production muscle. Okay, let's talk about the end goal here. We've laid out the road, but what's the actual destination? What does it really mean to be fluent?
Your first huge milestone is this number, 1,000. Once you learn the 1,000 most common words, you'll suddenly be able to understand about 80% of daily conversational Mandarin. This is where the language really starts to open up.
It's also really important to know the difference between fluency and proficiency. Fluency is your first goal. It means speaking comfortably and naturally. Proficiency is more like academic or professional mastery. That's a much longer-term ambition. Aim for fluency first.
So really, the most effective strategy, the main takeaway, is to go deep, not broad. It's so much better to master a core vocabulary of 2,000 to 3,000 common words than to have a weak, surface-level knowledge of 10,000.
And that's it. That's the roadmap. No more confusion, no more decision fatigue. You have a clear, step-by-step path to follow. So the real question is, are you ready to take that first step?
Ever wanted to have a real conversation in Mandarin? Well, you're in the right place. In just the next few minutes, we're going to give you the absolute essentials to make that happen.
All right, so here's the deal. Are you ready to have a real back-and-forth conversation in Chinese in like the next 5 minutes? I know it sounds a little crazy, but I promise it's way easier than you think. Let's dive right in and start with the foundation.
Believe it or not, our entire foundation starts with just one single word. But this word, it is an absolute powerhouse. We're talking about the word for good.
Okay, so here it is. This character is hao, and you pronounce it hao. Now, on the surface, it just means good, but it is so much more than that. It's your go-to word for agreeing to pretty much anything. Someone asks if you want to grab coffee, you just say hao. It means okay, sounds good, I'm in, all of that rolled into one.
So what about the opposite? How do you disagree? This is where Chinese is just awesome. It's so simple. You just add one little word in front, bu, pronounced bu. So if hao is good, what do you think bu hao is? Yep, not good. See? Super easy.
Okay, get ready for a fantastic little language hack. In Chinese, to ask a yes or no question, you often just stick the positive and the negative together. So you take our hao and our bu and smush them together. Hao bu hao? It literally means good, not good, which is how you ask, is it good, or how about it? Just think about that. With only 2 words, you're already asking questions.
All right, now that we have that foundation, let's build on it. Let's see how this one simple idea plugs into our first real, actual interactions, like greetings and saying thanks.
And here we go. This is probably the most famous Chinese phrase on the planet, ni hao. But wait a second, look at that second part. You already know that word. Ni means you, and we just learned that hao means good. So hello in Mandarin is literally just you good. See how it all connects? It's like building with Legos. Okay, next up, a phrase you are going to use constantly. I mean, all the time. Thank you.
In Mandarin, that's 谢谢,谢谢. This is your universal key for being polite. Whether you're at a fancy dinner or just buying a bottle of water, 谢谢 is the word.
So what do you say when someone thanks you? The most common response is 不用谢. And I love the literal meaning of this one. It's no need for thanks. Isn't that great? It just feels so friendly and casual. Super easy to remember.
Now when it's time to head out, you've got a couple of choices. Your standard all-purpose goodbye is 再见,再见. It literally means see you again. But here's a fun one. Just like in English, if you're with friends or in a more casual setting, it's super common to just say bye-bye. Yep, exactly the same.
Okay, we've got the social stuff down. We can say hi, thanks, and bye. Now, let's level up. It's time to actually get some information by asking a few essential questions.
You know, to really turn this into a conversation, you need a couple of key tools in your toolkit. We're going to focus on two of the most practical things you can possibly learn: how to talk about this one or that one, and of course, how to ask how much something costs.
Pay attention, because this next one might be the single most useful phrase you learn today. It's 这个, and it means this one. Seriously, think about it. You're at a market, you're looking at a menu, you have no idea what anything is called. What do? You just point and say, 这个. It is an absolute lifesaver.
And, of course, after you've pointed and said this one, what's the very next thing you're probably going to ask? How much is it, right? Well, here you go. 多少钱? 多少 is how much, and 钱 is money. So, how much money? It's a must-know phrase.
Just take a second and let that sink in. With literally just those two phrases, this one and how much money, you can now navigate pretty much any market or order from any picture menu in China. That's how powerful these building blocks are.
Okay, theory is great, but let's see it in action. We're going to put all these little pieces together now in a real-world scenario. So picture this. You're at a restaurant. You've got the menu in your hands, but it's all Chinese characters. You can't read a thing. Panic? Nope. No problem at all.
You just find a picture of something that looks amazing, point right at it and say, 我要这个. 我要 means I want, and there's our best friend, 这个, this one. I want this one. Done. You've ordered.
So, you've had your meal, it was delicious, you're full, and now it's time to settle up. So you catch the server's eye and say, 买单, 买单. It literally means buy the bill, and it's exactly how you ask for the check. And there you go. You've just navigated a whole restaurant interaction successfully. All right, for our last section, let's go beyond just the basics of ordering food and asking for prices. We're going to look at a couple of phrases that I like to call cultural power-ups. These will make your interactions feel so much more genuine and meaningful. First up is 加油. Now, the literal translation is add oil, like you're putting gas in a car. But what it really means is, come on, you can do it, let's go. It's this amazing all-purpose cheer. You'd shout it at a soccer game, or you'd say it to a friend who's got a big exam coming up. It's just a fantastic phrase of encouragement. And last but not least, if you find yourself out for a drink with friends, you're going to hear this one. 干杯. It means cheers, but the literal translation is a big clue, dry glass. And yeah, that's often the expectation. If someone toasts with 干杯, you're kind of supposed to finish your whole drink. So, use that one wisely.
And that's it. You now have the fundamental building blocks for your very first real conversation in Mandarin. You've got the tools in your pocket. So really, there's only one question left to ask. What conversation are you going to start?
All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to talk about something that trips up almost everyone learning Mandarin: pronunciation. We're going to crack the code, really break it all down, and give you the tools you need to build a super solid foundation. Seriously, this is going to change how you speak and hear the language. Does this sound familiar? You're studying hard, you know the vocabulary, you get the grammar, but when you actually speak, something just feels off. Maybe you've even had native speakers kind of tilt their heads trying to figure out what you just said. It's a really common, really frustrating feeling. And you know what? It almost always boils down to a few core misunderstandings about how Mandarin sounds actually work. And that's why this is so important to get right from day one. See, when pronunciation is just an afterthought, it leaves these tiny little gaps in your knowledge. And over time, those little gaps turn into huge cracks that can totally stall your progress down the line. But here's the good news. It's completely fixable, and we're going to start right now. So why are we making such a big deal about this? Well, because great pronunciation isn't about showing off or sounding perfect. No way. It's actually a massive, massive advantage that makes your entire learning journey faster and easier. Let me show you what I mean. Getting pronunciation right is a total game changer, and not just for your speaking. First off, it massively boosts your listening skills. I mean, when you know exactly how a sound is supposed to be made, your brain can pick it out in a conversation instantly. That makes understanding what people are saying way easier, which of course speeds up how quickly you acquire the language. It all works together, creating this powerful loop where you hear better, you speak better, and you stop those bad habits from ever taking root. Okay, so how do we actually do this? We start with our roadmap, the pinyin chart. Now, I know this thing can look a little intense at first glance, but honestly, you can think of it as a blueprint that contains every single sound in the entire language. And our job is to just break it down into a few simple, easy-to-manage pieces. And here's this secret. Every single syllable in Mandarin is made up of just 3 building blocks. That's it. You have the initial, that's just your starting consonant. Then you have the final, that's the vowel part. And finally, you have the tone, the pitch that gives the word its meaning. You get these 3 things down, and you've basically mastered the entire sound system. So let's start with the one that scares everybody the most, the tone. Tones can feel really weird and abstract at first, so let's stop thinking about them as some complicated linguistic rule and start thinking of them as the music of the language. Instead of trying to memorize charts, we're going to use some simple, memorable analogies that you can use every single time. First up is tone 1. We call this the singing tone. It's high, it's flat, and it's steady. Just imagine you're singing a single, comfortable note and holding it, like ma. No ups, no downs, just a clean, level sound. That's your first tone. Next is what we call the unsure tone. And I promise you already know how to make this sound. It's the exact same inflection you use in English when you ask a question or you're confused. Like, huh? That rising sound? That is the second tone. Ma? Easy, right? Okay, now for the third tone. This is where pretty much every textbook gets it wrong. They tell you it's a dipping and rising sound, like a check mark. Forget that. In natural, everyday speech, it just goes down and stays down. It's low and a little bit creaky in your throat. That's why we call it the zombie tone. Think of a zombie groaning, brains. That low, gravelly sound, ma. That's exactly what you're aiming for. And finally, we've got the assertive tone. This one is just a sharp, quick drop from a high pitch to a low one. Think about how you'd give a command to a dog that's chewing your shoe. No, stop. That forceful downward chop, that's the fourth tone. Ma. And that's it. Singing, unsure, zombie, and assertive. Those are your 4 main tones. So we've got the music down. Now let's talk about the actual sounds themselves, especially the so-called problem sounds, the consonants that just don't have an equivalent in English. This is another spot where learners get hung up, but there's actually a very simple secret to unlocking all of them. And this is it. This is the secret. To master all 9 of the hardest sounds in Mandarin, you only need to learn 3 new positions for your tongue. That's all. It's not about making crazy shapes with your mouth. It's just about precise, consistent placement of your tongue. Let's take a perfect example. Say the English word shoe. Pay attention to your tongue. It's probably kind of flat and relaxed, just floating in the middle of your mouth, right? Now, for the Mandarin shu sound, you do something very different. You actively curl the very tip of your tongue up so it's pointing toward the roof of your mouth. That one little change, shu, creates a completely different sound. And those 3 tongue positions are the keys to the whole kingdom. For the J, Q, and X sounds, you place the tip of your tongue right behind your bottom front teeth and push the middle of your tongue up. For the ZH, CH, SH, and R sounds, you use that curled up tongue position we just practiced. And for Z and C, you put your tongue tip right behind your top front teeth. Z sounds like the dus in kids, and C is like the tuss in cats, but with a puff of air. If you can master just these 3 positions, you've cracked the code on all the hard initials. Okay, one last piece to this whole puzzle. You know how in English we don't really say want to, we say wanna? It's a shortcut that makes things flow. Well, Mandarin does the exact same thing with its tones. It's called tone sandhi, and it's not nearly as scary as it sounds. The most common rule, the one you'll see all the time, is this one. When you have 2 of those low, croaky zombie tones right next to each other, it's just awkward to say. Try it. Ni hao. It's clunky.
So to make it sound smoother, the first word naturally changes into a rising, unsure tone. So you don't say ni hao, you say ni hao. It just rolls off the tongue so much better. And there you go. That's the core of it. That's the entire framework for nailing Mandarin pronunciation. You get that every syllable is just an initial, a final, and a tone. You've got simple analogies for all 4 tones, and you know that all those hard sounds really just come down to learning 3 new positions for your tongue. This is your toolkit. So the big takeaway here is that pronunciation isn't some impossible mountain to climb. It's a system. It's a skill. It's something you can learn with the right approach. You have the map now. You have the tools. So the only real question is, are you ready to start the journey?
Let's talk about Mandarin Chinese. For most of us English speakers, learning it feels like trying to climb Mount Everest, right? But what if you could actually do it? What if there was a roadmap, a self-taught method to get you from absolute zero to actually having conversations in just 6 months? Well, today we're going to break down exactly how one person did just that, step by step.
So, on one hand, you've got the official word. The U.S. Foreign Service Institute literally calls Mandarin a Category 5 language. That's the hardest possible tier for English speakers. But on the other hand, we have this incredible result, passing the HSK4 exam in only 6 months. And just so you know, that's the test that proves you can talk about a whole range of topics with native speakers. So the big question is, how on earth is that even possible?
And this is what makes this method, which was put together by Dr. Izzy Seeley, so amazing. It's designed to be accessible for pretty much anyone. First off, it's totally self-taught, so no crazy expensive classes. It's super low budget. And maybe best of all, you can do it from anywhere in the world. All you need is you and an internet connection.
Okay, before we dive into the strategy, let's have a quick reality check. This isn't some magic pill. It's the story of what worked for one person. And it took some serious dedication. We're talking 4 to 6 hours of focused study every single day. Now, you can totally adjust that pace to fit your life, but that level of commitment, that's the part that's non-negotiable.
So, where do you even start? You might think it's with your first character or word, but nope. The first step is all about your master plan. It's about building a rock-solid foundation by figuring out your why before you even think about the what. This is honestly the most important question you can ask yourself. Why are you really doing this? Is it for your career? For travel? To connect with family? Whatever it is, write it down. I mean it. That why becomes your anchor. It's what you'll come back to on those tough days when you feel like giving up.
Once you know your why, it's time to define your what. You know, vague goals just lead to vague results. Dr. Seeley's goals were super clear. Get to a conversational level, be able to type in Chinese, and of course pass that HSK4 exam. When you set clear goals like this, you know exactly where to focus your energy. For example, if typing is your goal, you don't need to waste a ton of time learning to write every single character by hand.
And here it is, the golden rule of the whole plan. Consistency over everything. Seriously, a little bit every single day is so much better than trying to cram in a huge steady session once a week. Think of it like building a wall, right? You lay one brick at a time, every day. That daily habit gives your brain the time it needs to really lock in that new information while you sleep. So make it a daily habit, no excuses.
Okay, you've got your master plan, now it's time to get your tools. Step 2 is all about the core resources that are going to give you structure, help you remember everything, and be there to answer your questions whenever you get stuck.
This whole system really stands on 3 pillars that all work together. First up, you've got the HSK textbooks. These are your curriculum, your structured path from A to B. Second, you have the Anki app, which is basically your memory powerhouse. It makes sure you don't forget what you learn. And third, a great dictionary app like Pleco or Hanping is your lifeline for looking up any new words you come across.
Now, it's not enough to just have the textbook, you've got to know how to use it. And there's a system for this. First, you always listen to the audio of the dialogue. Just listen, train your ear. Then, you read the text and look up any new characters you don't know. And only after you've tried to piece it all together yourself do you look at the English translation to see how you did.
So why is a tool like Anki so incredibly powerful? Well, it's all based on this brilliant scientific idea called spaced repetition. Basically, the app's algorithm is smart enough to show you a flashcard right at the moment you're about to forget it. It's this process of actively recalling the information that makes memorizing stuff so efficient. You stop wasting time on the words you already know cold.
The strategy here involved using 2 different kinds of Anki decks. The first was just for single characters, adding about 10 new ones a day to keep it from getting overwhelming. But the second deck, this is the real game changer, it was for full sentences. And these flashcards had audio from a native speaker, which is just crucial for learning the context, the grammar, and the correct pronunciation all in one go.
All right, your plan is set. You've got your resources ready to go. Step 3 is where the magic really happens. This is where we close the gap between just studying a language and actually using it. It's all about active practice and immersion.
Look, knowing all the theory is great, but you have got to open your mouth and speak. Finding native speakers to practice with is absolutely essential. Websites like italki and language.exchange are amazing for this. And hey, pro tip, if your language partners are in mainland China, you'll definitely want to download WeChat to connect with them. And guess what? The golden rule is back. Just like your daily study, the same thing applies to your speaking practice. A quick 15-minute chat every day is worth so much more than a marathon 2-hour session once a week. That frequent practice keeps the language right at the front of your mind and builds your confidence way faster. Now, if you really want to supercharge your listening skills, you need to find something called comprehensible input. This is a huge concept in language learning. It just means finding stuff to listen to or read that's just a little tiny bit above your level. You can get the gist of it from the context, even if you don't know every single word. This is how our brains are naturally wired to pick up new language.
So what does that actually look like? Well, it could be something as simple as watching a kid's show like Peppa Pig, where the language is simple and clear. Or it could be using a browser extension to watch Netflix with both Chinese and English subtitles on at the same time. Or just listening to podcasts and music in the car or at the gym. It all adds up.
So we've gone through the plan, the tools, and the practice. But to really make sure this all sticks for the long haul, we need to talk about the mindset. These are the core beliefs that are going to keep you going when things get tough.
This is so important. This is not a competition. Yes, Dr. Seeley's pace was intense, but that does not have to be your pace. The real goal isn't about hitting some crazy number of hours a day. The goal is to be consistent with whatever time you can realistically give.
When it's all said and done, success really boils down to 2 final ideas. First, you have to find a way to enjoy it. If learning feels like a chore, you're just not going to stick with it. So find movies you like, listen to music you love, and talk to people you find interesting. And second, always remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You'll have good days and bad days, but that consistent, daily effort, that's what guarantees you'll get there.
And I can't think of a better way to end than with a quote from Confucius himself. It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. That's really the heart of it all, isn't it? This whole journey is built one day, one word, and one conversation at a time. The most important step you can take is just the next one.
All right, today we're going to build something really cool. It's a complete step-by-step roadmap for learning Mandarin Chinese all by yourself and, believe it or not, entirely for free. If you've ever wanted to learn but had no idea where to even start, this is for you.
So let's just tackle the elephant in the room, right? With all its tones and characters, Mandarin can seriously seem like this impossible mountain to climb, especially if you don't have the cash for expensive classes. So, is it actually possible to teach yourself this language without spending a dime?
Well, the answer is a huge, resounding yes, and I'm going to show you exactly how it's done. We are laying out the entire path, all the tools, and the daily routine you're going to need to succeed. Your adventure starts right now.
Okay, Section 1, laying the language foundation. You know, every big journey starts with that first solid step. For Mandarin, that means putting the most essential building blocks in place right from day one.
So how do we structure this whole journey? Well, we're going to use something called the HSK system. It's the official standard for Mandarin, and it's broken down into 6 levels. And think of these levels, they're not just tests. They're the perfect milestones for our roadmap, giving us this really clear, logical ladder to climb.
Okay, think of this as your core learning engine. The main resource we're going to lean on is Mandarin Corner's absolutely fantastic and totally free video course. It's perfectly lined up with those HSK levels we just talked about. And for a little extra practice, you can usually find the official textbooks at your local library for free.
Now, before we even touch a single word, we have to talk about tones. And look, this part is absolutely non-negotiable. Mandarin has 4 main tones plus a neutral one, and learning them is honestly more of a physical skill than an intellectual one. It's like you're literally training your mouth and your vocal cords to make brand new shapes and sounds. It takes practice, every single day, from the very beginning.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, building your vocabulary and grammar.
So once you've got a basic handle on the tones, it's time to start gathering the raw materials of the language, the words and the rules for putting them all together.
For vocabulary, you're going to need a two-pronged attack. And guess what? Both tools are free. First up is Anki. This is your digital flashcard system, and it is amazing for drilling words into your long-term memory. Then there's Pleco. This thing is an absolute powerhouse dictionary. Its camera feature, called Live OCR, lets you just point your phone at any character and get an instant translation. Seriously, it is a total game changer.
Okay, I've got some news for you that might actually be a huge relief. A lot of people are scared of Mandarin grammar, but the truth is, it's surprisingly logical. There are no verb conjugations, no gendered nouns, none of that stuff. Honestly, in a lot of ways, it's way more straightforward than most European languages.
Look, you are going to get stuck on a grammar point eventually. It just happens, right? But when it does, don't panic. The Chinese Zero to Hero YouTube channel has these great free playlists all organized by HSK level. You just find the specific thing you're stuck on, get a quick, clear explanation, and you can just keep moving.
All right, on to Section 3, activating, speaking, and listening. This is where the magic happens. We've gathered all the materials, the tones, the vocab, the grammar. Now it's time to activate all those skills and turn that passive knowledge into a real-world ability to actually speak and understand people.
Let me be super clear about this. You cannot perfect your tones in a vacuum. You absolutely need feedback. Finding a native speaker, maybe through a language exchange, is the single fastest way to make sure your pronunciation is on point. They'll catch those tiny little mistakes that, honestly, you just can't hear on your own.
Now, for listening, here's a huge tip. Don't just let the language wash over you. You've got to be an active listener. So you're listening to a podcast. You hear a word you don't know. What do? You use a tool like Pleco's voice-to-text feature to capture it and define it. This turns every single listening session into a powerful vocabulary-building exercise.
So, what does this whole media immersion journey look like? Well, here's a basic timeline. In the beginning, just stick to your course. Then, around HSK 3, you're ready for podcasts made for learners. By HSK 4, you can dive into native content. But here's the golden rule, the most important part of this slide. For TV and movies, Chinese subtitles only. English subtitles become a crutch, and they will absolutely short-circuit your learning.
And that brings us to Section 4, reaching advanced immersion. This is when you've got a solid foundation and you're ready to really dive into the deep end by tackling reading and writing.
When it comes to reading, you'll want to start with graded readers around HSK 3. Those are books written just for learners. Now, for writing, there's a really important distinction to make. Learning to type using pinyin, that's the system for writing Mandarin sounds with our alphabet, that's essential. You've got to know how to do that. But learning to write the characters by hand, that's a beautiful art form for sure, but it is a massive time commitment, and it's totally optional for fluency. You have to be honest with yourself about your goals.
Okay, Section 5, and this is a big one, creating your daily routine. We've got all the pieces of the puzzle, now we just have to put them together into a consistent plan you can do every single day. This is what turns wanting to learn into actually learning.
So what's the magic number? How much time do you need? You really want to aim for at least one focused hour of study every single day. And listen, consistency is so much more important than intensity. 1 hour a day is way better than cramming for 7 hours on a Sunday.
So what does that 1 hour actually look like for a beginner? Let's break it down. It's a really simple, balanced split. 20 minutes on your main HSK course, 20 minutes drilling vocabulary with Anki, and 20 minutes actively practicing your tones. It's simple, it's balanced, and it works. And hey, if you can add a weekly session with a tutor on top of this, whoa, that's going to supercharge your progress.
So what happens when you get to that solid intermediate stage, around HSK 4? Well, this is where the path kind of forks. You actually get to choose your own adventure based on what you want to achieve. Do you want to be a fantastic conversationalist? Then you double down on podcasts and speaking practice. Do you want to be able to read Chinese novels? Then you keep climbing that HSK ladder. The choice is yours.
So there you have it. We've laid out the entire map, we've shown you the tools, and we've built the daily plan. Literally everything you need to learn Mandarin all by yourself and for free is right here. The only question left is probably the most important one of all. When are you going to take that first step?